All right, hi everybody. My name is Melody Ebner, and my group consists of Catherine Tarantino, HongMei Zhang, and Felix Gonzalez. We're going to be talking about sexuality in the classroom. So there's much debate as to whether we should or should not address these topics within our classrooms. Is it appropriate? Is it not? But what happens when we exclude these topics is that we often exclude, misrepresent, and misinterpret an entire community. So, with teachers now starting to implement different inclusive lessons, we want to shed light on this topic, and that's the primary goal of teaching these principles in the classroom, is to become more inclusive and accepting of students who might know somebody who's LGBTQ or might be themselves LGBTQ. The first article that Catherine found talks about the importance of teaching these practices in elementary schools and how if we don't teach these practices, we really help to perpetuate different stereotypes. So one thing that stood out for Catherine was a statistic that said 18% of schools learn about families with two moms and two dads. So that's a lot of schools that aren't learning about this because teachers are so scared to say the wrong thing that they just don't say anything at all. And that's really the opposite of what we want to implement here. We want to start talking about this subject. We want to be inclusive. We want students to have representation. So there's 3 approaches the article talks about that you can take within your classroom. You can expand representation within certain texts that you have in your own library for your class. You can question categories with regards to gender and sexuality. And what that means is just opening up this for your class in a more broad way, using the books you already have to question these concepts, to be more aware, and to help them navigate creating their own lens on the topic. And then you can question the representation that you see in these books. You might have one book that talks about an LGBTQ person, which is great, but that's not representing an entire community. That's shedding light on one person's experience. So you want to question the representation you have and how much representation you have. In conclusion, this article talks about the willingness to try and to be open and what that means and how that relates to just continuously learning. So you have to revise the way you speak or label or present ideas to your students to be more inclusive. And that's why Catherine chose this article, was because it expands on our topic of sexuality, obviously, but it's very relevant in what's happening today in schools. And it talks about the approaches that you yourself can implement in your classroom to be more inclusive. HongMei found the second article, which was a bit more research-based, and what it did was it presented findings from a nationwide study of the experiences of educators themselves within LGBTQ topics in elementary schools. So they responded to open-ended questions and long-term surveys, which really focused on the preschool through 5th grade classrooms and the challenges that are presented there. And then it took those findings and prompted questions for other educators, which I thought was really creative and a great way of shedding light on this topic about the importance of teaching LGBTQ discussions. So, and then I included these quick videos.
Right, we start with just understanding what it means to be homosexual, heterosexual, bisexual, transgender. So they start with learning those definitions. Kids find it much more comfortable to start with talking about things rather than people. From there we start to introduce things like people they might know, so actors or sportsmen or celebrities who may identify as bisexual or transsexual or gay or heterosexual. So they have people they can identify with and talk to, versus talking about people they may know or talking about themselves. As kids get older, as they get into high school and as they mature a little bit, we find that they're able to talk a little bit more about themselves or about people in their own community, and in high school we feel that they're ready to talk about sort of real life versus people that they know from movies or sports teams and things like that.
And then this next video is the same teacher just talking about some inclusion practices for your own classroom.
So to start with, for teachers who are looking to introduce this into a classroom, I would start with just learning the definitions. It's a really safe place to start for both the teachers and for the kids. So learning the definitions of what it means to be bisexual, what it means to be transgender, what it means to be homosexual, what it means to be heterosexual, so everyone understands those terms. Once you have that basic knowledge, then you can introduce discussions about what it might look like in different parts of the world, or maybe introduce people who identify as one of those different types of sexuality. So it gives a platform for kids and teachers to start speaking about.
So just to wrap this all up, we wanted to say that introducing these topics really makes your elementary school students more accepting of all sorts of people from different backgrounds, and really creates this community of inclusion. And there's some practices that you can utilize in your own classroom, like we kind of talked about and touched on. You can introduce basic terminology. You can bring up a discussion about people students might know who's part of the LGBTQ community, family, friends, celebrities, anyone that they look up to. And by doing this, you create an awareness and an inclusion, an openness of the LGBTQ community, and you create this positive, safe learning experience and environment. So just remember, it is up to us as teachers to create that safe space for our students. So Catherine put in some relevant resources that support our inclusivity and some other references, and we will put those in our discussion board along with the links to the YouTube videos we used and the links to the articles that HongMei and Catherine found. So on behalf of all of us, thank you so much and have a great spring break.